Pat Leonard. A little bit impromptu here just before 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday. We are here in week 8. It's Giants Eagles week number 2. The Giants took down the Eagles in MetLife Stadium 34-17 in week 6. Of course, a huge win that nearly reset the course of the season for the New York Giants. Unfortunately, Brian Daboll ruined all the good vibes a little bit with that concussion violation on the sidelines. The Giants get fined $315,000 total because of it. The Giants organization gets fined $200K. Daboll gets docked $100,000 of his own money. And then Cam Scattaboo gets fined $15,000 himself for those violations on the sideline. Although the Giants did not get docked a draft pick, the NFL essentially said that the punishment wasn't more severe because the Giants cooperated so quickly and efficiently in the investigation into what happened. As we know, John Mara came down swiftly with a statement of his own after that, saying that it was unacceptable and that even though Daboll said that he was not trying to interfere, that is what happened. So the Giants lose some money. They bring on Julia Koch as a minority owner, and already some money going right back out to the NFL from the organization. But let's focus on the football. Let's focus on the big game ahead. Giants are, of course, 2-5, although they're 2-2 since Jackson Dart entered the lineup. 2 big wins over the LA Chargers, who looked great against the Vikings on Thursday Night Football, and against the Philadelphia Eagles, a rival who has had the Eagles number or had the Giants number for several years running now. So the question is, which Giants team shows up? Is it the team that earned those 2 big victories with Jackson Dart making plays, the defense getting timely, um, you know, whether it's turnovers, whether it's sacks from Brian Burns and timely plays and contributions all across the board, especially from the defensive front and Burns? Or is it the Giants team we've seen in the losses to the Saints and the Denver Broncos, which again, more progress on points being put on the board by the offense, which is, of course, the consistent positive through all of this with Dart in the lineup. But with the high variance play of this rookie QB and his mobility, his versatility, the looseness that he plays with, and that Daboll and Kafka are encouraging him to play with, um, you see the flip side of that, which is against the Saints, against the Broncos, some of those plays get made and some of them do not. And often to their detriment when they do not, whether it's the turnovers in the Saints game from the rookies Scattaboo and Dart, whether it's Dart, even though he obviously made tons of plays in that game against the Broncos, the interception late and missing some deep shots that could have easily ended it for the Giants. So the question is, which identity shows up, which Giants team steps forward in Philly. The good news, and listen, not that you don't want people injured, but the good news for the Giants in this matchup is unexpectedly, of course, going into the week, AJ Brown, the Eagles' number 1 wide receiver, is out for this game. Ruled out with a hamstring injury, didn't practice this week. So he is out of the lineup. So that means Jalen Hurts only has Devontae Smith as far as elite receiving options for wide receivers. And then you have Dallas Goedert, the tight end, Saquon Barkley, obviously. Landon Dickerson, the left guard. And then on the defensive side, Quinyon Mitchell and Jalen Carter, all guys who did not play the last time against the Giants, are back in the lineup in this game compared to week 6 when they faced New York. So that'll make things more difficult on Brian Daboll's team. Daboll's team, some good, some bad. The Giants are getting back Darius Slayton. They're getting back center John Michael Schmitz. That's the good news. Bad news, Paulson Adebo is out, the top corner. That means we're going to have to see more of Deontay Banks, which, of course, is a scary proposition. And then Javon Holland, starting safety, doubtful. Chauncey Golston, part of their defensive line rotation, not playing. And um, and then you have Brian Burns is playing in the game, but he is banged up. Um, he is dealing with a hip injury. He's dealing with a foot injury, and Burns is going to play. He plays through a lot. He's obviously right now making a case to be a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He's tied with the NFL lead for 9 sacks, so all that's good. But um, this might be too much for him to play at his top level, the normal top level through. That's going to mean they need more from Dexter Lawrence, from Kayvon Thibodeau, from Abdul Carter. Carter, by the way, didn't hear from him after the game in Denver, didn't hear from him all week in the Giants locker room. Um, Myself and people from the Giants were looking for him today, Friday. Um, he was not located. So, my hunch is that in this game, with Burns being banged up, they're going to try to use Burns and Lawrence to then unlock Carter and Thibodeau and try to get them free towards the QB rather than Burns being the recent beneficiary and the one who's finishing those plays. So we'll see how that goes. But the bottom line with all of those injury updates is each team is getting some players back and losing some at key positions as well. And so it'll be a different looking matchups in a lot of respects, but also you know, um, one with a lot of swinging ramifications for both teams depending on the result. The Giants obviously at 2-5. They're a team who is in the market for players if they feel like they create momentum, sweep the Eagles, and have reason to add. And then on the flip side, if you fall to 2-6, you lose to the Eagles, you sustain some more personnel losses, then things look a lot different versus the Eagles, who again, just like the Giants, are kind of hanging by a thread. Both, it's like they're standing on the razor's edge. It's like on the one hand, if they get a victory and they have two in a row now, or the Vikings and Giants going into their bye week, they've got Brandon Graham, who's not in the lineup this week, but back as a locker room leader to help the defense as well. Then they can start feeling a little bit better. And if AJ Brown isn't severely injured, then you get back your top wide receiver coming out of the bye at that would be 6-2. But if they fall flat on their faces against the Giants, their home crowd gets on top of them and Nick Sirianni, and they go into the bye with a loss and with a lot of questions about what the heck is AJ Brown even still doing on this team. And there's a lot of conversation about that. Then things could sour quickly in the city of brotherly love as well. So a lot of different ramifications on both sides. Thanks for being here, guys. I know I didn't go live on Talking Ball live Thursday night as I normally do, and I've skipped a couple of recent Mondays. To be honest, just been pouring myself into the daily news lately and either been gassed or hung up with some other responsibilities that I've had to kind of tail off and skip a live here or there. Going to try to be more consistent for you all because I know this Giant season, whether it's wins or losses, has been very exciting, very interesting, and a lot to unpack. Obviously, the Denver game was on the wrong end of it and just crazy to think about. But then, of course, prior to that, the win over the Eagles, 17-point win over the Eagles at home. No better feeling than that. So we'll continue to cover it all here. I see all of you guys, diehards in the chat. Kylo, what's up? Says the GOAT, Pat. No Mets says, Pat, what up? Picks for the game. I picked the Giants to cover. Um, I don't know about a win or a loss. I think I could see it going either way. We were talking to Andrew Thomas today, and he said that Jalen Carter being in the lineup changes a lot, as far as this matchup goes and how you have to handle their defensive line. I mean, we know that he's that good, but, just interesting to hear the starting left tackle for the Giants say that. Jackson Dart had a lot of free running lanes and was very good at extending plays against the Eagles the first matchup. And the Eagles are vulnerable in the secondary when Dart does that. Makuba, the safety, Ringo, the corner. Neither of those players, frankly, very good so far. And the Giants had a lot of success targeting both of them in that first game. Darius Slayton is back in the lineup as well. So I think maybe Dart is going to look to get him free down the field. So I could see the Giants winning the game. You guys know me. I mean, I'm as real and honest as I can be on everything. And so plenty of these weeks I pick against the Giants or I pick them to get blown out if I think they're going to be. Um, I'm still looking to see what the line is shifting to on my bookie. If you guys see um, any of the lines moving, please let me know that because I'm very curious uh, what the adjustment is going to be in Vegas with AJ Brown being ruled out because that just happened really maybe 20 minutes prior to me jumping on here. So I'm curious to see where that shifts. I think winning in Philadelphia is very difficult. The Giants have not won there in years. I believe it's 2013, if I remember correctly. I was looking that up earlier for my Sunday story. I think it's 2013. Long time since the Giants have won in Philadelphia, and even longer since they have swept the Eagles in a season. So the stakes of this are so high. I will say this. I said this during the Broncos game. I mean, obviously, it looked at a lot of points of that game um, like they were going to be, like they were going to win that game. But even when they started coughing it up, and Jackson Dart, like I said, wasn't perfect. He was a part of that. But even when that was happening, there you could just see, like with Dart in the lineup, it just seems like the Giants are always in it, and they feel that, they believe that. So that's the encouraging thing. Uh, you know, I think the Eagles win, but the Giants cover is my guess on the prediction. But, the Eagles can get in their own way and the Giants can win this. I mean, Kevin Patullo, Nick Sirianni, I was very unimpressed with their plan on offense against the Giants last time. And they, for whatever reason, got away from their running game. Um, it was vanilla looking. It wasn't very creative. They just kept running the same stuff on third and long. The Giants didn't have to work too hard to diagnose what was coming. They were changing the picture in the secondary on Jalen Hurts after halftime, especially, and they felt like it made things a lot simpler for them. So, this Eagles team is more vulnerable than, like, let's say, going into the season, everybody envisioned they would be. I think the key for the Giants right now, especially though, is as these games go on, we've talked about this a lot, and I know Jackson Dart plays a certain way, plays a certain style, and you don't want to take away the aggressiveness and what he does best. So I get that. But for them to continue to have a chance in these games and to feel this confident about their chances against opponents like the Eagles, he has to stay healthy. He has to stay in the lineup. Like, this is a big thing. I know that sounds obvious, and I know a lot of teams are, of course, better when they have their starting quarterback versus when they have to play their backup or whatever. But it just feels like the drop off in expectations, in energy level, in momentum, in effectiveness, in production from Dart to what we saw prior to him with Russell Wilson. It's just so big and so meaningful that they really need him to stay on the field. They really need him to stay on the field. And I'm talking about week to week, regardless of what this result is. So I'll say Eagles win, Giants cover for now. But the AJ Brown news is big. Carlton said Quinyon Mitchell played in the last game. He got hurt late in the second quarter for the Eagles. We were up 17-7 by the time Mitchell went out. Yes, he did start the game, and the Giants had some success with him in the game. But um, there was a dramatic difference in what the Giants were able to do once he left the game, too, as far as where they could exploit the Eagles. Like, think of it this way, Carlton. When Mitchell is on the field, even though it's not like you're never throwing at his side of the field, he's not that much of a shutdown corner, but he's so much better than, let's say, Ringo on the other end that you're just naturally, consistently going to go away from him more often because it's the preferable option. And that makes even though that gives you a chance to complete that other pass, it also makes it a little bit more predictable for the Eagles to attack. And then they don't have to necessarily give as much help. Maybe they can play a little bit more man instead of zone. But when he left that game with Adoree Jackson and Keely Ringo in the game there as their outside corners, there was just no reason for the Giants to have to throw anywhere. Like, they could throw anywhere they wanted. So that was still a huge concern or a huge drop off. No Mets says keep Schlottman in the starting lineup. Yeah, I actually think JMS hasn't been that bad. I think he's played some of his best ball prior to getting hurt. So I do not agree with that. I do, though, think that no matter who plays center in this game, and it's going to be Schmitz, but I'm just saying, like, Jalen Carter he's just too much to handle. Like, you're going to see him make some plays, even with double teams. Dalen says the Giants have soldiers, will be fine. Carlton says what I just said. JMS got it. I was playing better before he got injured. Stop the run, double AJ Brown, and bracket Goddard on certain downs. AJ is out, however. Dope Boy says Giants get smoked this week. History will repeat. We will see. Nomad says if history repeats, the Giants win recent history. Um, Evan, what's going on? Great to see you. Hey, Cynthia, what's going on? Deb says, here's hoping. Always fun to watch Dart progress and Cam run. Go Giants. By the way, Scattaboo, very funny. Asked him, I asked him why he tried to run that guy over in the end zone in Denver after he had scored. He goes, he looked like he was going to hit me. It's pretty funny. I also asked Scattaboo about the pass block on Dart's interception, and he said, "I got effed up," is what he said. Alex Singleton did to him, the Broncos linebacker. So, very honest and open from Mr. Scattaboo, and he is absolutely correct. He said Singleton got lower than him, and basically got the better of him, and Scattaboo's got to be that better in those moments for his quarterback. Evan said they should have beaten the Broncos. Yep, but that's this team's MO is to, at times, too often, shoot themselves in the foot. Joe says Hurts likes Smith as a wide receiver, does not like throwing to Brown. Brown did have a big game last week, though. Dart needs to run out of bounds like Mahomes, says Joe. Absolutely agree. Hooks, Jared, what's going on? FYI, guys, go to hooksrub.com, use that code Talkin Ball, get that pepper sauce, that new pepper sauce that just dropped. Hooksrub.com, 20% off with the code Talkin Ball. What's going on, Jared? Great to see you. Joe says, Pat, what about the new wide receiver the Giants picked up from Atlanta? Will he play? What about Koo? Ray McLeod, don't expect him to play this week. I think possible that we could see him as early as the Niners game, though. We'll see. And then let's see. Younghoe Koo. I'm glad you asked about that. Didn't mention that off the top. But the kicking situation, again, of significant interest. Graham Gano says today that he's ready to go. He practiced all week, although he's listed as questionable for the game with the groin injury that he's been on injured reserve with since he was injured in warmups during week 3 against the Chiefs. Watching practice, observing things, and reading the tea leaves, I think that there's a chance Koo is the kicker. Now, Daboll said it will be Gano if he's ready. Gano is listed as questionable, fully participating, and Gano tells us he's ready to go and talking like he's going to kick. But there were just some things I saw as far as like Koo seeming like he was more in a full uniform, um, who he was hanging around with, being with the specialists, what he was doing compared to what he's done in previous weeks. And today I thought it was interesting and noteworthy that when they were doing the kickoff period of the open portion of practice today, Friday. This is we're here on Friday, October, what is this, 24th? Um, Younghoe was doing some kickoffs, and all the kickers were on the field. And Younghoe was doing some kickoffs. His first kickoff, he shanked it, like hooked it to the left, and it bounced in the landing zone, but then looked like it would have gone out of bounds. And it wasn't a good kick. And Daboll like walks up to Koo and stands pretty close to him to his left, and stands there and watches Koo's next kickoff. Then Daboll walks in front of Koo about 15 yards or so, but still behind the coverage team, and stands facing the returners and watches as the kicks go over his head. Clearly, closely monitoring the situation and the kicker. So I'm interested. On the one hand, it's possible they're just getting Younghoe ready in case, but Graham's their guy as long as he says yes. That said, from observing this consistently, like it looks to me like they're getting Younghoe ready to potentially kick. And, you know, I like that idea, honestly, because I think if you're listing Graham as questionable, given his history, I don't see how you could activate him and make him your only kicker. It just doesn't make any sense with what has cost them in the last 3 years. Basically, 3 losses with him being injured due to his injuries. You have the Jets game where Dable sends him out injured to kick that field goal a few years ago with DeVito playing. You've got the Chiefs game this year where he gets injured in warmups. He still ends up kicking a short field goal, but isn't available most of that game. You have last year in Washington. So, just it's just too much. It can't keep happening. You can't keep having it. Um, it's just it would be, it's been malpractice. It would continue to be malpractice for them to just have him active as one kicker, unless they are like a zillion percent confident that Graham is ready to go. But I think it's smarter to go with Koo. And I talked to Young Wei. I did a story for the New York Daily News. It's on the website now. You can go check it out, nydailynews.com. Um, and I talked to Young Wei about his acclimation process, about why he wasn't kicking in Denver, and you can read all his quotes. I'll go over that in a second. But just some stats to back up why it makes sense to go with Young Wei given Graham's history in this game. So Koo last year he kicked in Philadelphia and he made all three of his field goals from 39, 22, and 34 yards. And at the end of the game, the Falcons scored to tie the game 21-21, and Koo makes a 48-yard extra point because there was like a unsportsmanlike by the Falcons on the first try, I think. And so, or scoring the touchdown. And so they backed up the extra point. And he still sank a 48-yarder in Philly to win for an extra point. And so obviously when you hear that, it makes you angry that he wasn't their kicker last week when McTamney was in. Um, but here is his history. Essentially, like obviously I know Koo was on the street after the Falcons cut him. Giants work him out, pick him up. Now he got cut for a reason. He missed a 43-yarder to tie the game, 43-yard field goal to tie the game in week 1 against Tampa. And the Falcons were like, okay, we've had enough. It's been 6+ years. Essentially it seemed like they showed signs that they benched him and signed a new kicker. And it almost sounded like, there was a conversation that, hey man, like if you guys are going to bench me, not play me, like just send me somewhere else. It's over. Um, so like they part ways. Um, but Koo is now again, this is comparing him especially to there's the reliability of Graham physically. There's also Jude McTamney just not being reliable to kick extra points, which he missed 2 of in Denver. So here are Koo's stats in his career. Granted, he has been erratic from distance. So in his career, he's 48 of 63 on field goals from between 40 and 49 yards, and 29 of 40 from 50 plus, but that includes 9 of 15 in the last 2 seasons. So he's missed 6 of 15 kicks from 50 plus in the last 2 years. He did have a hip injury late last season that he tried to play through that hampered him. Some of his misses were during that time. He actually told me one of my lessons that I learned was don't try to play through an injury, which is an interesting point given, again, the Gano situation. But listen to how reliable Younghoe Koo has been on extra points and on short field goals. In his career, he is 175 out of 182 on extra points. So this is his, I think, 8th NFL season, and he's made 175 of 182 extra points. That includes in the last 2 seasons, so all of last year and including last year and this year's first game against the Bucks for the Falcons. He is 28 of 28. Perfect on the new extra point in these last 2 seasons, last year and week 1 of this year. So he has not missed any of his 28 extra point attempts last year or this year. And in his career, inside 40 yards on field goals, ready for this? 104 makes out of 108 attempts, 104 out of 108. That includes under 30 yards, a perfect 52 of 52 on field goals in his career. So again, is Koo the perfect kicker? Nobody is. If he plays for them and they attempt a 45-yarder, might he miss it? Sure. Has he missed inside 40? Yes, he has, but it's rare. He has shown the ability to be reliable on the kicks that you and I and everybody watching the game at home watches and says, you have to make this. Koo makes those kicks. Obviously, we all know Young Wei made the game winner from 40 yards against the Giants to win with no time left in the medium Pepsi game of 2021 when the Falcons came into MetLife Stadium. the infamous medium Pepsi game. So all of this is to say for me, it's like, okay, if Graham Gano is healthy and they roll him out there, they're rolling the dice. But it just feels like if he's not 100% healthy or you're not sure, I mean, listen, obviously you're not sure. He's questionable. He's not fully active. So then you could say, well, you have to activate two kickers. But it's like, well, no. If you're not confident in Graham, just activate Koo and make him your kicker. And that's what that's my guess. No one's told me they're definitely doing that, but that's my guess. But Koo told me that what he was told about why McTavish was the kicker against Denver is that um, he said that they told him that McTavity's been here longer, more time on the operation with Casey Kreider and Jamie Gillen. And he said, I understood that. Koo also said that in the competition with McTavish, he said, I've kicked pretty well. He's like, my swing feels good. I've kicked well. He didn't feel like he cost himself the opportunity by kicking poorly or something like that. It wasn't like McTavish kicked well and Koo didn't, and that's why McTavish was in. But he said Jude kicked pretty well too. He said, like, we both kicked well enough where it wasn't obvious one way or another, like, hey, we have to go with this guy. He's so much better in practice recently. Like, they were both making kicks. So he understood that. The thing about the operation is two things. One, he said the time of the operation, that, like, in other words, the timing of the snap, the hold, and the kick, based on what the team wants and the kicker wants, it's different from team to team, he said. And Michael Gabriel said the same thing too. So there is an acclimation process that you go through when you join a new team, you get a new kicker, etc. The other thing is, and this was interesting, I didn't know this. Younghoe Koo told me that every kicker has a different lean on the ball that they like. So in other words, when the snap comes back to Jamie Gillen as the holder, when he holds it down and puts his finger on top, right? That every kicker likes the ball tilted a different way. And I've been covering football for a long time. I'd never really thought about that. Like, I've talked to Jamie Gillen about how he punts and holds the ball. I've talked to kickers about their stride. I've talked to them about a lot of different things, angles, wind, all that stuff. I had never had the conversation with a kicker about the lean of the ball. So, maybe you guys are very familiar with that. I had just never really dug into that. But who said it's a very real thing? In other words, Jamie and Casey Kreider are very used to exactly the way Graham likes it. That's their operation. That's what they know best. And it's the muscle memory of, like, hey, let's say there's a bad snap. Jamie goes right to, okay, yeah, let's get it down. And you want to get it down the way the kicker who is playing likes it. So it's your job to get it down to make it comfortable for the kicker if you're Jamie Gillen. So you want enough time on task with that new kicker so that you're not putting a hold, like a lean of a ball down that Jude McTavish likes when Graham Gano's kicking. And you don't want Graham Gano's lean of the ball for Younghoe Koo. Like, Younghoe said that if you get the wrong lean, you could strike it pretty well, but you could miss hit it because it's not the way that you prefer the ball to be leaning when you kick it. So all of that is to say, like, Younghoe said when he signed with the Falcons, in he said in the midway through his first season there in 2019, he said that you know this may be like what the Giants are doing right now and acclimating him slowly to getting him up to speed to kick, is like the idea behind it is to avoid what he went through, let's say when he first got to Atlanta, which was, he said he got there and I think they practiced twice together, but then the punter was hurt who normally held for them. So he went into his first game with the Falcons as their kicker in week 9 of 2019. And he, the holder, and the snapper had only done it two times before that in practice together before they did it in a game. And it was like, okay, let's see how it goes. And like, the Giants obviously don't want to be there. But they've mismanaged this position for so many critical games and situations that it's hard to trust what they're going to do. But to me, this all points to Younghoe getting a shot. That's what I think we will see based on whether they activate Graham on Saturday. Um, to me, you're playing with fire there if you do that. That's what I think. Hirsch, what's going on? Great to see you. Dope Boy says Giants play to lose, not to win. It's hard to watch. It's like I'm watching a movie I've seen 1,000 times. Then that's partially the operation from the front office and the personnel side. it's also partially the poor management of the game. Like one thing that I'll be writing for Sunday's paper as I preview this game is it drives me crazy that like when I asked Brian Dable and Mike Kafka this week and others did too as well about um, their decision to throw that ball in the play where Jackson was intercepted, right? And managing the clock and how to factor that in. They won't even acknowledge the element of time in the game as a factor in their decision. It's like, well, we wanted to put the ball in Jackson's hands. And it's like, well, how about you use the clock as your ally and run it down so the other team can't come back and score and beat you? And I think they're not talking about it because obviously they don't want to go over a huge mistake they made. But also, I wonder if they're not talking about it publicly because they don't really fully understand it. Because if they did, they wouldn't keep making the same mistakes. And honestly, if I'm like Kafka, I want to explain that and get out in front of it because if you're supposed to be head coach material, you should be addressing that, not ignoring time as an element of a game. Hirsch says Eagles are going to lower the boom on the Giants. Let's see. No Met says why are the Giants still trusting Gano? We'll see if they are. Gian says, are the Giants still entertaining trades at the deadline? Yes. Jacoby Myers, a name to watch. I think Chris Olave should be too. I'm interested to see where that goes. Have more calls to make. Really, really coming out of Sunday's game is going to be the true test of where this goes and what it is. Um, I think the the Giants are in a position. Two things. One, yes, you do have Ray McLeod in here. He will give you like a real NFL player in the mix, but there's two things. You want you want to augment and improve the receiving core, add to it, give Jackson Dart more weapons, especially if you beat the Eagles and you feel like, hey, listen, like our record in the division's a little better. Uh, if we're winning these games, now it's 3 of 5 with Jackson. We can contend with anybody. We've been in all the games. Two of them we were in and we're winning before we collapsed. Hey, like we can challenge here. We can do something. Like, let's go get another piece. That would be one scenario. Another scenario, though, like where they make a trade. Another scenario is where um, they lose and out of sheer desperation because they can't afford for the bottom to fall out, they still go and make some kind of move. Now, do I think that's wise for the future of the organization to spend a premium asset to do that? No, no, I don't. I'm sure they would be more interested in doing a player for player trade if they could, but they don't have any players on their team that are going to get back the type of receiver that would make you go, "Holy cow, look at who we just got," right? But those are the two scenarios I see. But yes, I do think they're going to try to be active here. If the team proved that it's warranted and deserved, because the Giants are like I said, they're hopeful that their team is going to continue to show to them um, that they deserve to be investing more in them. And then also the front office and the coach are desperate right now to show results. Hooks says it's wild that we can't figure out a kicker. I mean, there are hundreds of kickers each year that graduate college that have the ability to just kick down the middle of the field and hit field goals. Could have at least picked up a UDFA to try out with Gano and Jude during the preseason. Well, and that's also the thing, Hooks, that you bring up that, you know, I think is a great point, which is listen, like who do you trust? If you're the Giants right now, who do you trust as your kicker? Because if Graham Gano is still questionable for this game, coming off of if he's questionable for this game, coming off of what you just did, and with um, and Koo on the roster. So you're like, okay, Gano questionable. We know he's coming off IR. We don't know if we fully trust him, but it looks good. He says he's good. The trainer says he's good. Okay, we'll see. But we know we can't trust Jude McTavish. He's back on the practice squad. I was surprised he was even back on the practice squad. But if you don't play Younghoe Koo now, if he's not here to go in the game now, then what's he even here for? You know? And actually, Koo said to me, he goes, honestly, listen, because like, when I was asking him how he was doing, he was like, listen, if I wasn't doing well, like I wouldn't be here. Like if I wasn't kicking well in practice and they weren't showing me that they believed in me, then I wouldn't even be here. So, and I agree with him. But then, like you said, Hooks, it's like either go get a kicker that you know you believe in, or play this guy, give him a chance. That's how I feel. You just can't go through this Gano thing again. By the way, speaking of going through things, I'm going through some excitement right now because I just got my first order of swag in, and my favorite so far is the Talking Ball winter hat. Look at this thing, little beanie, Talking Ball logo on there. Hold on, let me see if I can show it to you. What do you guys think? Little Talking Ball logo, pretty sweet, right? Got it in a bunch of different colors. There's a link on the YouTube page here. PL on NFL is the handle. Obviously, those of you listening live, you can see me right now. But yeah, go check it out. Some good swag. Right now, it looks like to me like the sweatshirts look really cool from what I saw, like what I got delivered to me. Still tinkering with the t-shirts, but the hats and the sweatshirts and the pint glass, excellent stuff. Think you'll love it. So the link is on my bio. Like I said, Talking Ball merch. Go check it out through Shopify. Easy buys and great gear, and I'm loving this right now. I'm wearing it everywhere. Let's see. Obviously, all of our lives are brought to you, and our podcast brought to you by my bookie, Boom Chaga, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, and Sal Loretta for Men. But just going impromptu here, so I don't have the typical skin and all the graphics on. But you guys know my bookie's where you're placing your bets. That code there is Leonard, my last name. The code at hooksrub.com is Talking Ball, and the code at Boom Chaga is Talking Ball 25 on the subscribe and save option. Let's see. Joe says Giants should be able to get a soccer player with a big leg and turn him into a field goal kicker, just like the Cowboys. Brandon Aubrey, stud. Deb says years ago, Mia Hamm kicked a 50-yard field goal at the Meadowlands. Get Mia Hamm in. Yeah, hell yeah. Sign her up, like Hook says. John says Pat just cursed Gano. He's going to miss at least one extra point now this week. No, no, no. No, I'm not. No, I'm not cursing Gano. I'm saying if he's questionable, I'm concerned. And like, listen, how many times do you get shock collared before you don't run into the electric fence? Dope Boy says I was rooting for Koo. Glad they got rid of the other guy. Um, the Cowboys kicker is perfect. He never missed even from 60 yards or more, says GCN. Deb says, why did this other guy win the job over Koo? Yeah, so apparently it was because he was more time on task with the holder and snapper. So there was more of a comfort level and understanding of the expectation of the team for the operation time and for the lean and for the hold and all of that. But which Koo actually told me, he said I understood what they were saying there. The one thing Pat, that I don't like there is how can you ignore, though? You're going into a hostile environment. Also, based on how the Giants operate, you can tell that they did not trust Jude McTavish from any significant distance as a field goal kicker. So again, it just it just brings you back to like you have to consider all the variables there. And like I'm in that stadium when the game is on the line there at the end, it's shaking like a college stadium. Like it was rattling and rocking at Mile High at Empower Field. And like Jude McTavish wasn't ready for it. And listen, the whole operation wasn't perfect with Gillen and Kreider either there. But like, you know, they made the wrong decision. They made the wrong decision. Oh, we got a super chat in the queue. Dope Dez says the roster is still mismanaged and they need to sit Hyatt and put Koo in. Why is Brian so bad? First of all, Dope Dez, thank you so much for the super chat. Setting a great example, great way to support the channel, and also gets your comment or question answered first, elevated to the top of the queue. So if you purchase a super sticker or a super chat like Dope Dez just did, I will go to you immediately. Thank you so much, Dope Dez. Support our sponsors and support the channel through these super chats as well. So why is Daboll bad and mismanaging it? Well, remember the game day roster decisions are the GM and the coach too. So that's the frustrating part about this is it goes all the way up to the top. Um, I do wonder, Dope Des, if when Ray McLeod enters the game and enters the lineup, does that does that lead to Jalen Hyatt being inactive again, or like dressed but a DNP like he was in the first couple games of the season? Either him or Bo Collins, right? I guess maybe right now it would be Bo Collins possibly, but it would be one or the other in that case. So that's coming down the pike. And why is Dable bad at managing games and managing the roster? I think it's collective. It's the training staff, it's the medical staff, it's the coach, it's the general manager. It's too many cooks in the kitchen. That's what I've always been told by people who have worked there, who still work there. There's too many people in the room. There's too many people in the room. Ownership. Danny Dudd says, is it a monetary thing? What is the cost um, to bring Koo up from the practice squad? No, that's not the impetus. That's not the reason not to bring him up right now. Um, let's see. Yes, Brandon Aubrey from Notre Dame. Hell yeah. John says, Pat, sorry if you covered it already, but will Ray McLeod play versus the Eagles? No, I believe it's more likely if you see him for the first time, it'll probably be the Niners game at home at MetLife. Cruzan says, is Banks starting? It is looking that way. We will see if that's what goes down. I mean, they did bring Corey Black back into the fold. I think it would be tough just to throw Corey Black right into the fire against the Eagles. That would be gutsy. Um, I personally think Art Green should get a chance, at least as a better tackler on the edges than Banks. Um, don't know if that's going to happen, though. I do think it's going to be, my guess is the secondary starting is going to be Flott, Banks, Belton, Newbin. Um, the GCN says NFL should allow an emergency kicker, so if the first guy misses, they can bring in the backup. Yeah, you could call it the Dable and Shane rule. Dope Boy says horrible coaching decision. Dable didn't call a timeout for Dart when it was a crucial third down late in the fourth last week in Denver. No, the problem was that he didn't run the ball to force Denver to use their last timeout. That was the problem. Coaches lost the Denver game, says Deb. Lot of bad stuff in Denver. John says, I lost all respect with Kafka with his response. I can't tell players not to score. That's garbage. Imagine if you told Vince Lombardi that he'd kick your teeth. He'd kick you in the teeth. I agree. I didn't like Kafka's press conference at all. Didn't like it at all. You hit it right on the head, John. It was almost like, what did I have to do with this? I didn't like it. Giants should just wait and draft a wide receiver from Ohio State, says Joe. Let's see. Mr. Danky says we are cooked with Banks playing. At least AJ Brown is out. John says also saw the Seahawks were shopping Tariq Woolen at corner. Have the Giants given them a call? Any DB out there is an upgrade over Banks. Haven't heard that. I'd like to see them draft a real number one tight end like Gronk or Kelsey, top notch, says Deb. The tight end position is a sneaky position where this regime just constantly swings and hits like a bunt single for a guy who can contribute but isn't like a high end, and they just keep taking swings at it. Chris says Waddle for a first round pick is a no brainer. Shane doesn't have the guts. Something tells us this will haunt us, and we will re-sign Robinson. I mean, trading away a first would be absolutely desperate. But again, if they beat the Eagles, they're going to feel like, hey, let's go for this. But trading a one, desperate. Two, even a two would be desperate. GCN says Waddle makes $33 million a year and then $37 million a year. He is not going to take a pay cut on the cap hits, so he is out too much money. John says Banks being active. I still don't understand why the Dolphins would sell Waddle. The only way it would make sense is if the owner made them do it, because otherwise the coach and the GM would be signing their own death certificates. Banks being active has to be a Shane call, says John. The guy does not care. He's not doing basic DB stuff. His attitude and his hustle stinks. Well, also, listen, if we're going to talk about hustle and attitude and effort, Drew Phillips in that Denver game, that play on the sideline with Evan Ingram, totally unacceptable. where he like two-hand touched him and Engram stayed in. I talked to Drew about it. Listen, I like Drew a lot. He was accountable. He said, "Yeah, that was one problem. That's like one play that's really bothering me." He said, like that's the one that bothers him from the game that he put on tape. And what I gather from talking to him, it was part fatigue related, um, part like he thought he was going to be able to do it easier than Engram made it because Engram is fast and bigger. But if you look at the play, like I mean, he barely touched him from what I could tell. Um, and so, just unacceptable. You can't put that stuff on tape, and it becomes contagious. That type of play and lack of hustle, lack of effort, lack of finish, if you want to use that word. And certainly, I think, like Andrew Thomas said, they're not lacking in confidence despite what happened in Denver. But listen, especially defensively, if the start of the Eagles game goes well, you can forget about Denver and you can just say, okay, now we're playing this game. But if you start slipping hard and fast early in this Eagles game off of the end of the Denver game, your confidence on the defensive side of the ball with the Giants could wane very quickly here. So there's a lot to how they start on defense. Um, and yes, Joe Shane is involved in all of the uh, game day roster decisions as far as who's active and who's not. Chris says, "Wonder why we don't play more press man." Well, because Bowen doesn't play a lot, as much press man as what like Martindale did when he was here. Bowen plays more zone. He does play some man, and then there's combo coverages too, like with some man with the zone behind it. They play some of that as well. Um, I mean, Banks is a better corner when he's playing man than when he's in zone. Um, and there are corners who are like that. He's not the only one, but um, listen, there's personnel issues here. Like whoever is guarding Devontae Smith on Sunday is going to be overmatched at times, but also might be able to make plays. I mean, like Flott was the one who got beaten deep on the Smith play that would have been a 70-yard touchdown from Hurts, but Hurts just overthrew it and missed him in that first meeting. But then again, he made plays on the ball against him too. So be interesting though. Like the Eagles do have weapons, but will there be like a second receiver who steps up with AJ Brown out? That's what I'm curious about. Cap doesn't matter, says Chris. Kansas City and Eagles prove that. Well, they manage their cap better too. Um, oh, Hooks likes the beanie. Yeah, hell yeah. Dope Boy says, nice design, brother. Dope Boy swag. Appreciate that. Here's the swag they're talking about. Talking ball, winter hat, beanie. Look at that. Come on. That's cold. It's cold. Giants propose a rule change, get rid of the field goals and extra points when they ban the tush push. Yeah, that's funny. Uh, Chris says, feel like there are set up field goal problems. Yep. GCN says, Pat, are the Giants going to pay Daboll's and Scatman's fines for the blue tent? No, the Giants have their own fine, 200K, and then Daboll comes out of his pocket, 100K, and then Scataboo, 15K. John, thank you for the reminder, everybody. Please hit the like button while we are live. You see that thumbs up on the screen. Please hit those like buttons while we are live. That always helps engagement, brings more people onto our channel who don't know about it yet. And then, um, you know, uh, please subscribe. Please subscribe to the channel because the more of you that are here, the more our community grows. And I really think, as a Giants community, as an NFL community, as a podcast that now has a space on Radio Row at the Super Bowl and gets great guests on Radio Row all week long at the Super Bowl, you're getting a lot of content here and a lot of information. And especially on Talking Ball post game lives from the stadiums after these games that you're just not getting anywhere else. And by the way, I promise to be better about doing these Talking Ball lives quicker after the ends of these games because I know that you guys are chomping at the bit for information and analysis and quick hit info and updates. Chris says Gano is another example of protecting Shane. Joe says, Pat, the Giants re-signed the field goal kicker to the practice squad, Jude. Yes, they did. That's what I was saying. Like, I just don't know why he's on. I don't know why. Richard says, I've changed my mind about the dropping eight controversy. Broncos were in max protection. Would rushing four have made any difference? Wouldn't blitzing leave us even more vulnerable? Yeah, I mean, the key to the dropping eight thing is if you're going to play it like that, your guys have to keep the ball away from the sidelines, true. But also, like, one thing that was weird about that call is if you're going to call that drop eight call, the execution of it was strange. If you watch Newbin and Belton as they drop, they're the robbers on that play. You know, guys who have kind of free roaming ability who are supposed to take away essentially what they feel is coming from the quarterback by watching his eyes. And they're dropping is to a certain depth to protect a certain depth on the field. For whatever reason, watch Newbin, he stops dropping at like the 45, like 43, 42, 45, something like that, and it just wasn't deep enough. And then he makes the mistake of pushing out to his right instead of covering the middle of the field. And then Drew Phillips, who's guarding the receiver, isn't in the right position and doesn't finish the play as well. Drew Phillips had a horrendous fourth quarter, by the way. Had the worst fourth quarter of anybody on the Giants, really. Um, but again, it's like the call is one thing, but then also the execution and even the nuance of what they're asking the robbers to do to back where they're backing up to, that seemed to be kind of poorly conceived. So that's a part of it. And yeah, one thing I did not buy, like Shane Bowen said he should have had Dexter Lawrence on the field on that play. Listen, I know you want Dexter Lawrence on the field for all these plays. He's supposed to be one of your best players. He hasn't been one of the Giants' best players. He's not in the playing shape he's been in previous seasons, and he didn't make many plays in that game. Like Roy Robertson Harris in that game at least had like batted a pass in the air. Dexter Lawrence is just not himself right now. He needs to step up. He needs to play better. So, did I feel like his absence on the field was the reason that a play was made there? No, I did not. Um, Obviously, the Broncos got a little lucky too. It looked like he was throwing the ball to Sutton, and it still went to Mims. Um, the other option on that play, though, is to send pressure and like send pressure, not just like rush forward, but like send pressure, force the ball out, and rally and tackle in bounds is another way to play that situation that you could have done. Richard, yes, you're right that they were fatigued as well. Um, GCN thinks kickers should not count towards roster size. Uh, Joe says Bills are in big trouble, allowing 5.8 yards per run, worst in NFL history. Looks like the Patriots are the team in the East. I agree with you. The Bills are in trouble. Um, I believe I took the Panthers to cover against the Bills in this game. And the Panthers have been running the ball well, so that'll be interesting to see. Um, no, the Bills are in very real trouble. They're an imperfect team. McDermott's a defensive guy as a head coach, but a defensive guy. Their defense, I know they've been banged up, but they're not very good on the defensive side of the ball. And you know, Josh Allen's great, but like he can't do everything. Hooks doesn't want to see Corey Black pressed into it right away. Uh, Chiefs are number one team in the AFC now. If you watch Talking Ball, you heard Benny Fowler say in week 3 when the Chiefs were 0-2 that the Chiefs were still going to win the Super Bowl. Ain't desperate if you can't draft number ones anyway, says Chris. Pat, if things start out bad in the game, it will go straight downhill. Uh, yes, the Giants ran Statue of Liberty against Denver. D Rock says, I would rather have Joe Benigno start over Banks. You're funny. Uh, Chris Spires with a super chat. Thank you. He says, do you think Dexter is playing hurt? I do think his elbow is bothering him, but Chris, I think it's more of a playing shape thing. Um, I think that really Dexter, you know, I don't follow why he's in such different shape than he's been in the past, but I don't think his stamina is anywhere close to what it's been. And he's not like, listen, he's always been double teamed a lot. The difference this year compared to previous years is he's not making plays through them this year. Like he's a great player for a reason. He can make plays even if he's getting double teamed, and it's not happening. Um, he is dealing with the elbow. That's why he's wearing that big brace on his elbow. It happened in maybe the Chiefs game where he aggravated it. But I mean, even just watch some of his pass rushes prior to that drop eight play. Watch his like 2 or 3 pass rushes prior to that. Watch how he's moving and reacting and taking on his man. And you tell me if you think he's not absolutely exhausted. John says, Pat, have you heard any NFL reaction to the NBA betting scandal? I've got to think this problem spans multiple leagues. Well, I will say today there wasn't a card game going on in the locker room, and there usually is. So that's one thing. But um, also, the NFL sent a memo out to its teams essentially reminding everybody of the strict rules and regulations and reminding everyone of like what you can do, what you can't do, that you can't bet on games, all those things, even if it was obvious stuff, sending out reminders because of the hot water that the NBA is finding itself in right now with this politically charged investigation. QDA, good to see you. QDA says you're right on that, Pat. I think you 100% rush the passer there and rally when your strength is the front, along with the injuries on the back end. Yes, no doubt. Would we have won those Super Bowls with Eli if Spags played prevent instead of just going after Tom? I think you answered your question right there, QDA. Joe says, are all the NFL games fixed like in the NBA? NBA is not all, NBA, no, these games are not all fixed. Do I watch some games sometimes in all leagues and go, that's fishy, or what the heck? Why is that game going to overtime? Like the other night when Kevin Durant did the timeout Chris Webber call and they just ignored it, and then that game went to overtime and double overtime. Come on. But no, I mean, don't believe everything you hear. There's gray areas and nuance to all of this. But no, this is not fixed. This is not fixed. Um, it is not. But you guys are funny. That's a good question, though. I understand the skepticism. Why would you not be? It's not like you're not being a conspiracy theorist though either. Like this is stuff that happens, right? Tim got Donaghy back in the day as the rep with the NBA, right? All right. Let me know if you have any other questions. Drop some super chats in the queue if you could to support. And remember to support our sponsors Boom Chaga, Mushroom Super Drink, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, My Bookie, Sportsbook, and Salaretta for Men in Midland Park, New Jersey. And of course, like I said, we're live now on the Shopify. The link is in our bio. Talkin' Ball merch is available. Go get it today. This is the beanie. We got the beanie. Let's see if I can get it on with one hand. Come on now, look at this. The talking ball beanie. Fire. All right. QDA says what I feel like not much talk about, but Eli should eventually get into the Hall of Fame. But do you think anyone else should get in from those teams? OC maybe. Uh no. I mean, those are all great giants, but not Hall of Fame players. Um that front was just as much about the Super Bowls as Eli, and I don't know if any of them will. I don't know. I think they were more about part of those Super Bowls than Eli, even though Eli obviously, contributed his part. Eli's candidacy is interesting, QDA, because last year he didn't even make the final. What was it? The 15. He didn't even make like the 15 before they whittled down to the absolute finalists. So it's possible he doesn't get in this year either. Because as much as people on the East Coast feel a certain way about him, it's not the same everywhere when it comes to judging his resume. And you guys know I'm somebody who thinks that Eli has his special place in NFL history and in Giants history, but I don't think his full resume warrants Hall of Fame either. I think he and the Giants Super Bowl run, and especially that David Tyree catch and that drive, deserve to be memorialized. But overall, I mean, overall, I don't think he's a Hall of Fame player. But all right, guys, thanks for bearing with me. Thanks for being here. We'll have this audio up on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast as well, to check in and to listen if you missed the live. Thank you for everyone who joined the impromptu Friday live after I bailed on Thursday night. But more great content coming with the deadline around the bend. William says, Pat, do the Giants have analytics like baseball teams that are influencing the play calls in these games in high leverage situations? Something seems off. Um, they do, but like Daboll's a fly by the seat of your pants coach at times. So, like it was described to me once that they'll meet about something and talk about it, and then they get in the game situation. It's like whatever the coach feels like doing, like that's what he's doing. Um, and it can be inconsistent. Like when we ask him about going for two versus kicking an extra point in identical situations, and his answer is just, that's what I wanted to do. That's what I thought was best for the team, right? Those type of things. Um, It's either that they haven't thought through that situation well enough or that he's not listening. But yes, they do that work and they do present the numbers. Um, they're just not good at managing those situations when they're in the moment. Thank you guys. Hooks, thank you so much. Safe travels to Philly. Safe travels to everybody who's going to the game. Um, and look for me on Talking Ball post game live Sunday from Lincoln Financial Field. Look forward to joining you all and breaking down what promises to be a crazy game because that's just what the Giants play now with Jackson. Entertaining, but crazy. Thanks so much, guys. See you later. And remember the Talking Ball merch. Let's go. See you.